Ever since finishing Yakuza 0 back in January, I've been going through the entirety of the Yakuza series. Minus the samurai games, I have beaten every Yakuza beat-em-up game up to this point. After going through each of these games, I've come to realize that Yakuza combat is very inconsistent. For a franchise known for reusing assets, they certainly change a lot in the combat between each game. Whether it's mechanics, movesets, level progression, hit property changes, and even enemy AI behaviors, there is no Yakuza game that's the same. While I think it's cool that they're able to spice up the combat between each game, it does lead to a lot of issues where these changes can really remove things that were probably really good in the previous game. So I want to explore each Yakuza beat 'em up game and how they go about their combat structure, detailing the good, the bad, and the downright confusing decisions between each game. When it comes to the different structures of Yakuza games, you either have games where Kiryu is the main character, he only has one main style, and the level progression is only focused on him. Then you have games like Yakuza 4 and 5, which has multiple playable characters with their own unique styles, and they have a level progression for each character. And then we have the style switch games, which has one or two more characters with multiple different fighting styles, and the level up progression focuses on powering up the other styles. Games like Yakuza 0, Yakuza Kiwami, the Judgment games, Gaiden, and Pirate Yakuza. Depending on the level progression, it will determine how long it will take for your character to start feeling powerful and much more fluid to use. And Yakuza tends to change how you upgrade your characters throughout each game. At most, you will get 2 games that have the same level progression, but even then they will make some changes. Yakuza 1, 2, and 3 share the same level up progression where you can gain experience by beating an enemy, clearing sub-stories, or completing a minigame. Then you can spend these experience points on ways you can gain heat faster, gaining new moves, upgrading your health bar and your heat gauge, and gaining new heat actions that you can use against the enemy. The more you level up Kiryu, more powerful skills will start being available, but they'll start costing more. This is a pretty standard level up progression, nothing too out of the ordinary here. It all comes down to what you value the most and what you think Kiryu should have. I think the only issue is, depending on what you choose to value, you may or may not have a hard time throughout the rest of the game. So it is just a matter of balancing what you should put your experience points on. The other thing Yakuza 3 adds is Revelations, where you go around Kamurocho and Okinawa and you can take pictures of certain scenarios, which gives Kiryu a revelation to do a new heat action. This also appears in Yakuza 4 and Yakuza 5, and I've always been indifferent to Revelations. I don't mind them. I mean, it helps that Mac actually details where you can find perfect spots to take pictures in. So it's not like you're gonna be lost trying to find them, but I don't know. I think I just prefer regularly leveling up to get heat actions, but I don't have much issues with Revelations. I did find it weird that in Yakuza 3 we had 10 revelations, and then in Yakuza 4 we had 3, 4, sometimes even 5 revelations for each of the 4 characters, and then in Yakuza 5 they just brought it down to 1 revelation for each character. I mean, at that point, honestly, why even add the revelations in Yakuza 5? Revelations are a big part of the exploration aspect of Yakuza, so I don't really mind how they're implemented. Yakuza 4 introduces the orb system. Much like in the previous games, you gain experience the same way, but instead of getting points, you now earn orbs. You could gain up to 3 orbs every time you level up. And in Yakuza 4, you can just choose whatever skill you want, as long as you have the amount of orbs you need to spend on it. For some moves, there are restrictions. You have to unlock some moves first before you can unlock another, but you have the freedom to choose any move that you want, whether it's 1 orb, 2 orbs, or 3 orbs. As long as you have the right amount of orbs for that move, you can spend it. This is by far my favorite level of progression in the series. If I want to save up orbs for something like Akiyama's quick step cancels, I can do that. I'm not restricted by other moves to get it. I can just save up the orbs so I can actually achieve this move as early as possible to make Akiyama feel very fluid. Not just with Akiyama, of course, but with everybody. This is great. This is something I hope that they carried over into the next game. With Yakuza 5, they completely changed it again. Yakuza 5 tried to combine the old level up system from the first 3 games and the orb system from Yakuza 4. You can't just pick any move that you want anymore. It's back to unlocking one move to get to the next move. However, instead of spending experience points, you're now spending orbs. Early moves will start with 1 orb, and as you keep leveling up your character, it will now go up to 2 orbs, and 3 orbs, and so on and so forth. It doesn't really make the old way any better. In fact, it's practically almost the same. And then we have Yakuza 0, which completely changes things by making all level ups require money. If you want to level up Kiryu and Majima, you're gonna have to pay for it. Not only that, but they completely changed the tech, body, and soul category to now focus on each individual styles that the characters have. So you'll have to prioritize which style you want to spend your money on. The layout is also in this wheel format where you have a few ways where you can level up your character a little more freely than the previous games. Not to the exact extent as Yakuza 4, because you are going to have a lot of prerequisites, but you still get to have a little bit of freedom on what certain aspects of the style you want to improve. I am very indifferent to this structure. On one hand, it's not very hard to get money in Yakuza 0. You actually have a lot of avenues, from Kiryu's real estate, Majima's cabaret club, and fights with Mr. Shakedown. It's rare you're ever gonna go broke in Yakuza 0, so money isn't the issue. My issue is the handling of certain things is very sloppy. Did we really need to have a section for leveling up your HP on each wheel? It just seems a little redundant. Yakuza Kiwami goes back to basics where it's now the EXP point system like in the first 3 Yakuza games. They even brought back the soul, tech, and body categories. They do keep the same wheel layout from Yakuza 0. Now leveling up each style is all in one wheel from each category. So if you want to level up Brawler, you just go up. If you want to go Beast, you gotta go right. And if you want to level up Rush, you go left. And they all get the same health and heat benefits. I think this is great. This is actually one of my favorite ways level progression has been handled. It's very simple and straight to the point. And with the introduction of the Dragon Engine with Yakuza 6 means a new level up system, which for some reason RGG thought we were having too much fun with Yakuza games, so they had to change that. I'm not gonna beat around the bush here. I think Yakuza 6 and Kiwami 2 has the worst level up progression in Yakuza. So for this game, they decided to change up the categories from general stat buffs, heat actions and abilities, and other miscellaneous things that also pertains to side quests. You are now given 5 different stats that will go towards your abilities. If you want to level up something like attack, you'll have to spend your strength points, which is the red icon. My problem with this level up system comes from how they made things so tedious. Because for the majority of the beginning and middle of Yakuza 6 and Kiwami 2, Kiryu controls like cock and balls. This is one of my least favorite iterations of the character, because certain moves like speeding up your rush combo or having a good quick dodge requires that you spend a lot of stat points. And some of these skills are already locked behind a prerequisite where you have to level up your general stats first, like attack, defense, evasion, and your heat. So let's say I want to spend my points on getting another heat orb in Yakuza 6. I need to get my heat gauge around 160 points or something like that. I already spent all of my stat points trying to level up my heat gauge, and now if I want to get another orb for my extreme heat actions, I have to spend even more points, but this time with the other stats. But then it runs into another issue. You can get 4 of the point requirements for a move that you want to get, but for the 5th stat, if you don't have enough, you can't get the move. So now you are forced to grind for that one stat so you can get the move that you want after you've already spent a large amount of time leveling up something else. This could happen a lot in Yakuza 6 and Kiwami 2. But that's not all, they also added a hunger system. So if you want to level up your stats, you can go to restaurants and eat, pretty similar to the older Yakuza games. However, in this game, Kiryu has a limit to how much he can eat with his hunger meter. If you try to go over the hunger meter, Kiryu will not be able to gain EXP. If you want to lower the hunger system, you have to just let it go down as you explore, or you get stomach medicine. Eating is one of the best ways to level up in Yakuza 6 and Kiwami 2. So how do you circumvent this issue? Well, you can choose to spend your stat points to level up your hunger meter and level up how fast you digest your food. You see where the problem's going now, right? I have to put my points into leveling up easier when I could be leveling up, my general stats and my abilities. But if I want to be able to do those easily, I have to make sure I level up the hunger situation. It gets annoying to a point where I think this goal in trying to make things more realistic is actually making the game worse. Thankfully, this was only for 2 games and they never played with this concept again. Judgment goes back to a more simplified level up progression where you spend SP for moves that you want to unlock. To unlock some moves in the game, Yagami must go around Kamurocho and scan QR codes in order to unlock these moves. It's kind of like Revelations, but unlike Revelations, you still have to spend SP to unlock the moves that you scanned. You don't just get them for free anymore. Judgment's problem is actually a little different. The SP gain in this game kinda sucks. You gain so little SP in this game, especially from battles. If you're someone who has a bigger focus on the main story than the side cases, you're gonna have a pretty rough time leveling up Yagami in this game, because at the start and in the middle of Judgment, Yagami controls like dick and nuts. And he's another case like Dragon Engine Kiryu where you desperately need to level up your combo speed in order to start finally having fun with the combat. Also, for a game with 2 styles, why are most of the abilities for Tiger? The only things that Crane get are the general buffs, but Tiger actually gets like new moves and stuff. It's like they completely built the game around Tiger, and then when they decided to add Crane, they were like, oh yeah, we need to give this thing abilities. So Crane is just left with the general buffs and feels very underpowered in comparison to Tiger. Thankfully, Lost Judgment improved on a lot of Judgment's level up system. This time, they actually give you the ability to increase your SP gain. Thank goodness, Lost Judgment is much better when it comes to SP gain. All the styles now have a dedicated section you can level up. Lost Judgment has practically fixed my 2 main issues with the first game's level up system, and now it's overall better. Like a Dragon Gaiden and Pirate Yakuza practically share the same level up system. In both of these games, in order to gain a skill, you have to not only spend money, but also spend a second currency, which I'll call side quest points. You have a category for buffing your health, your attack, your heat gauge, except in Pirate Yakuza. You also have general combat upgrades and then upgrades for each of your styles. I am very mixed on this approach. Gaiden and Pirate Yakuza are games that are heavily dependent on you engaging in their side content. If you're not someone who is really into Yakuza side content, then this may become a problem for you. Much like with Yakuza 6 and Kiwami 2, If you have only one of the currencies required but not the other, you won't be able to unlock that ability. Now, if you do really love Yakuza side content and choose to engage with it, then both currencies are no issue at all. You rack up a lot of money during the side content in both games, and the Akame points or pirate rep goes up quickly when you're grinding the arena or just completing sub-stories. However, I think this is the other issue with this approach. It feels more grindy compared to the previous games, especially when you remember that you're not only leveling up yourself, you are leveling up your teammates, which these games are built around on. You can level them up in multiple ways, like giving them gifts or hosting a party, but the best way is grinding the arena. So the trick is to just find the least annoying high rated arena fight and just grind it for a couple of minutes to reach maximum level. You are able to choose freely what you want to upgrade, but there are some moves that are locked behind story progression, so you don't have complete freedom. I find this approach very messy. While I understand it's made like this to encourage you to engage more with the side content, at the same time, the least they could do is not fully restrict certain moves through story progression. I know they really want to avoid balancing issues, but I don't think this is the way to do it. Balancing is also difficult to reach for these games. Sometimes you can feel underpowered, like in Yakuza 3. If you were super focused in doing the main story and not bothering much with the side content unless the game forces you to, then you're going to have a very sluggish feeling Kiryu who feels even worse without the Kamaki abilities. Then on the flip side, you have Kiwami 2, Guided, and Pirate Yakuza, where you can just decide, I want to level up all of my attack power. Then you can just watch as you just shred through health bars in a single combo or heat action. Even crazier in Kiwami 2, where you can also boost your damage while using weapons. Not even the final boss of the game stands a chance against you when you're juiced up like this. It can get very silly, and your experience will differ from others depending on what you value more when playing Yakuza games. You want to know what else has me conflicted? Locking abilities behind side content. RGG has gone about these in different ways, with the most recognizable one being through training masters. This has been a thing since the very first Yakuza game with the GOAT, Sotaro Kamaki. They do try to spice it up with mixed results. In Yakuza 3, they have the IF7 where you get into virtual fights. Doing well in these fights nets you abilities like brand new heat actions, using knuckle weapons, being able to guard against blades, and even using your heat bar to heal yourself. Yakuza 4 is when they gave every playable character a training master. Akiyama has Saigo, Saejima has the Master of the Cave, Tanimura has Nair, and Kiryu once again has Kamaki. Tanimura and Kiryu have the standard training which mostly revolves around combat, but Akiyama and Saejima do some diversions. A lot of Akiyama's training revolves around the chasing mechanic that's in this game. You'll also be given a gun to shoot at enemies, as well as having training where you have to avoid gunshots yourself. Saejima decides he wants to play Spelunky and goes boulder punching and cave digging with his master to unlock his abilities. The virtual battles also make a return in Yakuza 4. You'll have to do this with all the playable characters to not only maximize your heat gauge abilities, but you also learn new heat actions. Most of these are still in line with doing combat in some way in the game, but it is a lot of grinding because you are working on getting abilities for 4 different characters. Yakuza 5 is when they start to get a little egregious with it. So, in every part, there is this chef that wants to try different cuisines from different restaurants from each city in the game. Doing this side quest is what boosts your strength, focus, and spirit. Strength boosting your unarmed attacks, focus makes your heat gauge stay at a certain point, and spirit boosts your damage on heat actions. The virtual battles once again makes their return, and you have to complete these to increase the speed you gain heat. And once again, everyone has their own training masters. Kiryu has Sosuke Kamaki, Saejima has Tendo that's also tied to his hunting side content, Akiyama has Saigo, Shinada actually has 2 training masters, one coming from his baseball side content and another for his main combat skills. Yes, even Haruka has her own training master to gain new abilities. If there's one thing about Yakuza 5, it sure isn't short on content. Whether or not the content is good though is up for debate. Now we move on to Yakuza 0. Kiryu and Majima have 3 training masters for each of their respective styles. So, if you want to be able to unlock more skills for each style, you have to invest money into those styles. That's not all though. If you want to unlock the legend styles for both Kiryu and Majima, you'll have to complete their main side games, Kiryu's real estate business and Majima's cabaret club. These are small games on their own that takes an extensive amount of time to complete. If you're someone who is not a fan of any of these minigames, you're either going to skip it entirely or feel dread trying to go for the completion route. Kiryu's normal fighting style that he's had for a decade up to this point is an unlockable, along with Majima finally having his boss moveset playable for the first time, also being an unlockable. I kind of get it for lore reasons, but having to do hours of side content with a completely different gameplay style for 2 fighting styles that aren't even the best for their respective characters is a little much. So Yakuza Kiwami decided, hey, let's do that again. In Kiwami, your abilities from Dragon have been removed after spending 10 years in the joint. So, you have to regain those abilities so that the style can be usable again. That's where the Majima Everywhere system comes in. Much like the name states, Majima is everywhere, and there are multiple ways you can get into fights with him. Whether he finds you on the street, you're getting something to eat, or if you decide to play a minigame. Fighting Majima throughout the story increases the Majima meter and you would gain an ability for the Dragon style. The highest the meter can go is Triple S. Now you probably think, sounds kinda tedious, but that should be easy enough. I should just be able to just grind this whole thing out, right? No, actually. You don't always get a skill by finding Majima in the streets of Kamurocho. Sometimes you need to trigger certain special events in order to get certain moves. Besides the rank up events, sometimes Majima needs to step into a fight, or you need to play a certain minigame in order to unlock a move. So, if you're someone like me who isn't a fan of pocket circuit racing, and then you find out the reason why you're still missing a move for Dragon style is because you have to play 6 pocket circuit races, you would probably be very annoyed. Now, I'm someone who likes the Majima Everywhere system. It is the defining feature of Yakuza Kiwami, and I think it really adds a lot of charm to the game with its interactions with Kiryu and Majima. However, I will admit that the process of unlocking Dragon style is very tedious. This is on top of having to grind in the Colosseum to get Komaki's paintings so you can unlock the rest of his abilities for the Dragon style. The benefit of doing all of this is at least your EXP gain is going to be massive, so you'll at least be able to level up Kiryu's other stats quickly. Yakuza Kiwami 2 locks a lot of abilities and heat actions behind sub-stories, minigames, and even a Haruka request. Some of these abilities you'll need to unlock through the Acupuncturist, who also has prerequisites. There's also the bouncer missions and the street bosses spread throughout Kamurocho and Sotenbori. Somehow, it's even more grindy than Yakuza Kiwami 1, especially with doing Haruka's request to get 1 heat action, and you have to get to double S for it. Like, come on now. I'm already personally not a fan of buying skill books and having to scan QR codes in Judgment, but then there are some skills that I have to get through Paradise VR, and I really don't like Paradise VR. Lost Judgment also has a lot of their skills locked behind their side content like the squirrel searches, the detective dog stuff, minigames, and side cases. If you also want to unlock all the skills for the boxing style, you are practically required to fully complete the boxing school story in order to max out all of your boxing abilities, which will take a little bit of time, but damn is it worth it when you do. At least the boxing minigame is genuinely fun and probably my favorite minigame in the series, so I don't mind it that much there. Gaiden surprisingly doesn't have any abilities locked behind a side quest, but Pirate Yakuza does. To unlock the rest of the Dark Instruments, you must complete the entirety of the Devil Flag sub-story. The Devil Flags is just more the usual pirate Yakuza gameplay. Sail on the boat, do a boat battle, do island raids, and then battle with each of the 4 captains. After you defeat them, you earn a dark instrument from Majima's Sea Dog style. That's about as straightforward as you can get to unlock new abilities. There's also a benefit to doing this side quest because you earn a lot of money and tons of pirate rep points for completing it. Never felt it was too grindy personally, felt in line with the rest of the game had set, which made me like it. I don't mind giving some incentives to unlock new abilities for characters. I actually prefer the training masters as a method of learning new abilities. Content like the Data Mina Mina virtual battles can really drag on for too long. I'm also very mixed on having to play a completely different gameplay style to unlock a new fighting style. I did end up liking boxing in Lost Judgment, but I'm not really huge on Real Estate and Cabaret Yakuza 0. I do know friends who love those minigames, so they would use all their time to grind those minigames to get those styles. Yakuza Kiwami had a decent idea of obtaining abilities through a more combat-oriented means, but the execution led to a slightly frustrating grind. Kiwami 2, Judgment, and Lost Judgment spreading their many different abilities across different side content can be a little too much if you're not the completionist type as well. I actually ended up liking how Pirate Yakuza went about unlocking new abilities. This was just playing through a huge sub-story that was just more of what the main game was already doing. However, Pirate Yakuza was very limited in what they could do with new abilities because they did remove a lot of mechanics, especially concerning heat. Speaking of mechanics, despite Yakuza games reusing a lot of assets, the changes they can make between games can be so drastic that it can make each entry feel better or worse than their previous entries. You can have the same city, same minigames, even the same combat styles, but there will be tweaks that really shape each game to what they are. I've really started to notice this in my journey going from Judgment to Lost Judgment, and then when I got to Yakuza 5 to compare it to Yakuza 3 and Yakuza 4, it made me realize that the changes that they made to Yakuza 5's combat kinda sucks. Give a quick disclaimer before I go into detail. I am not an advanced Yakuza player. I'm about as casual as you can get. So my thoughts on these combat changes may not line up with the best players who know more about the advanced tech and the intricacies of these games. If you really want to hear in great detail about the advanced tech in these games, I highly recommend checking out Curvy Nasty Jr.'s video series about the history of advanced Yakuza combos. They're great videos discussing each game's mechanics and how the different properties of certain mechanics shape the combat of these games. If you stuck around for this long, I really appreciate y'all hearing out the opinions of a newcomer to the series and how I've gained these impressions. Now, back to the topic at hand. On my first playthrough, I definitely wasn't sold on Yakuza 3's combat. I struggled a lot in this game, especially when it came to how the enemy AI was being on the defensive all the time. But then, I later found out the advanced players in the community are very fond of Yakuza 3. So then I decided to look up what these players were able to do in Yakuza 3, and I was genuinely impressed. This was vastly different from the game I was playing. Seeing the backshot combos, their reactions to certain knockdowns and wall bounding combos, I was especially impressed with how they used the reversal moves. It was pretty cool. Then when I replayed it and did some Coliseum fights with a maxed out Kiryu, I was able to do some very beginner stuff with wall bound combos. I obviously wasn't a pro, but there was a newfound appreciation I had for Yakuza 3's combat. Yakuza 4 was a little more noticeable with what you can do with wall combos, and it became a huge part of what I thought made Yakuza 4's combat very fun. Again, I wasn't a pro or anything, but things overall just felt smoother in the transition from 3 to 4. Akiyama became an immediate favorite character because of the quick step cancels and how he was able to do OTG combos with some of his finishers. He's able to do these cool infinites, which really surprised me. Yakuza 4 is when I started to understand the benefits of different hit effects of finishers, most noticeably Tanimura's backhand slap during the turnaround hit effect, which leads to him getting some ground juggles. Advanced players got a hang of this stuff already, but knowing that even someone like me could do these combos with a little extra effort makes the combat feel rewarding. So when I finally got to Yakuza 5, I was disappointed with how much they changed things. Not only with certain mechanics like back combos being nerfed because enemies would just turn around, wall bounding and knockdowns having their properties changed that made previous combos even harder or not possible anymore. On top of all these changes, they nerfed my favorite character from the previous game. Akiyama took the biggest hit when it came to these mechanic changes. He's not able to do wall bound combos anymore. Due to the knockdown change, a move like his running kick doesn't really work well on grounded enemies anymore. His quick step cancels feel more strict in this game, and then they gave him this stupid flip kick for aerial combos that overlap with his heavy kick combo. I don't know how they did it, but once I was finished with Akiyama, I sighed in relief. It did make me realize something though. Sometimes it's not just about what your environment allows you to do and what the character you're playing allows, but also what the enemy allows you to do to them. Yakuza Kiwami is one of my favorite games in the series because of the combat. In that game, knockdown combos aren't really a thing, however, backshot combos are at their most prominent in this game. Even in my first playthrough, I started picking up on how enemies reacted to getting hit from the back. At a basic level, you can do cool things like looping Majima with Rush after getting him in a corner like this, or you can even pull off sequences like this with style switching. That's not even getting into what you can really do with the Godspeed stuff as well as the instant style switch abilities. Kiwami is one of the most technical games in terms of combat, but even besides that, the game feel of it is absolutely top notch. I find games like Kiwami 2 and Judgment a little harder to enjoy on a casual level. Now don't get me wrong, these games also have extremely cool advanced combos like the quick step cancels in Kiwami 2, and Judgment using screen freezing from style switching to continue their combos. But I would still say overall that they have a worse game feel. One of the main things that make the early Dragon Engine games feel so clunky is the addition of blocking recoil. I hate block recoil. In games prior to Yakuza 6, enemies will block your attacks and you'll still be able to move forward with them as they're blocking. In the early Dragon Engine games, they added your character stumbling back if an enemy blocks your attack. It sucks even more when you're fighting in groups because once you get blocked, the rest of the pack will immediately get ready to jump you. Sometimes it can even happen mid-combo, which was very common in Judgment. Combine this with enemies in the Dragon Engine always being juiced up with super armor and knockdown combos not really being a thing in the Dragon Engine. When they start giving enemies super armor, that's when I'm just like, alright man, whatever. Heck, this was even a thing in Yakuza 4 and 5. At the very least, in Dragon Engine games, they are still able to react to certain hit effects and they're able to get juggled. Speaking of juggling, I think juggling is the coolest thing Judgment has added to the series and it has become a staple part of the current Dragon Engine combos. The addition of juggling adds to the fun of the games with style switching because you can combine the multiple styles together for really cool combos. In Judgment, style switching was kinda slow, but in Lost Judgment and onwards, they've sped up the style switching to make juggling feel more fluid, which is very appreciated. There could be an argument that the cooler combos now being more dependent on juggling is a little boring. However, juggling an enemy like you hit them with a launcher in Tekken is very stimulating to the brain. Lost Judgment did it the best with how quick the style switching was and how much you could spice it up. For some reason though, Gaiden and Pirate Yakuza nerfed how long you can juggle the enemies for, It puts a limit on how creative you can really get with your combos. The current Dragon Engine games may not be as technical as 6, Kiwami 2, and Judgment, but I'd overall say that they have a more comfortable game feel than the previous games. A significant feature that has changed over time is the heat mechanic. Aya made a good video detailing the changes of the heat mechanic, which really put things in perspective for me. When I talked about the level progression, heat was always a major part of the level up system. There used to be a lot of skills pertaining to heat, like blocking giving you heat. Then there was the introduction of red heat giving you access to brand new heat actions, and moves like Kiryu's bounding throw requiring heat. It wasn't just for heat actions. Speaking of bounding throws, they did make a huge change in Yakuza 5. Bounding throws do not drain heat in Yakuza 5, and this single change made Kiryu the most powerful character in Yakuza 5. Because of this change, Kiryu is able to handle crowds with relative ease with his light, heavy bounding throw combo. It's really good. But in 1v1 situations, Kiryu is able to do an infinite loop with his light, heavy bounding throw combo. You can even do this to the final boss, which is exactly what I did because I hate Aizawa. Yakuza 0 was a big departure from the usual heat mechanic with the gear system, now tying the combo speed of your light attacks to where you are with your gear level. Level 1 puts you at the slowest, and level 3 feeling more like the usual Yakuza combat speed in prior games. Not only that, some heat actions and abilities are tied to what gear level you're at. So there's a bit of a balancing act of either getting to a certain gear to use a certain ability, or making sure to stay at level 3 gear to use the style at its maximum power. I'm personally not a fan of this change to the heat system because of the restrictions of the gear mechanic, but it isn't awful. At the very least, heat gain in Yakuza 0 is actually pretty good, which is something I couldn't really say for a game like Yakuza 3. Yakuza 6 was the next game to make big changes with the heat system. It's not a heat bar anymore, they're heat orbs now. The more orbs you get, the more heat actions you're able to perform. There's also the introduction of extreme heat mode, which puts Kiryu in a superpower state where he craps out a ton of damage with his brand new heat actions. You can activate extreme heat as long as you have one heat orb. The more orbs you have, you can activate extreme heat as many times as you want, and you can upgrade how long extreme heat can last. This aspect of extreme heat got nerfed in Kiwami 2 and forces you to be at a max heat bar, which was a really weird restriction. I think the addition of extreme heat is very complicated. I've always been indifferent to the idea of extreme heat because the mechanic itself is very Mickey. In the Dragon Engine games, you can upgrade your character's attack to an extreme degree. So, even just with one heat action from extreme heat with a maxed out attack, you're either gonna kill your enemy or take them down to damn near half health. Combine that with the equipment and gear and Kiryu becomes a whole nuke. I did like how in the Judgment games they implemented having a faster combo speed while in EX mode, and also giving each style a brand new heavy attack combo. Gaiden also tried to give Agent style brand new moves from extreme heat, even though they're not the most reliable. They did also change extreme heat activation to be more like the Judgment games in Gaiden, but I think Gaiden is an even more egregious example of how ridiculous your damage could get with extreme heat. Over time, all the unique heat attributes that were in the PS3 era of games just started to disappear. The heat bar just became more for just doing heat actions and having extreme heat. Then in Pirate Yakuza, they just stopped caring, I guess. One heat bar to do only one heat action with some terrible heat gain. Then extreme heat has been replaced by a brand new mechanic, the Madness Gauge. There is no other use for the heat bar besides just doing heat actions. At that point, why did they even bother adding a heat bar in Pirate Yakuza? There are useful heat actions from it, don't get me wrong, but again, it's only just to do one. So you're most likely just gonna spam the one powerful heat action. Heat is not really relevant in Pirate Yakuza. The last topic I want to discuss is movesets. Earlier, I talked about how Akiyama's changes from 4 to 5 really hurt his fun factor, but Kiryu is also not exempt from this. I actually really like Kiryu's classic dragon style. Honestly, if Yakuza 3 Kiryu just had more damage, I would love him just as much as Yakuza 4 Kiryu, who has my favorite classic dragon style. Yakuza 0's legend style is... Not only is it ungodly slow on any gear level that's not 3, but it also isn't exactly the dragon style we know. Which makes sense in lore because this is a prequel, but that does mean Kiryu lacks the classic Kamaki abilities like the dodge roll, the Kamaki knockback, the Kamaki parry, and of course the tiger drop. Well, there is the twisting parry, that's pretty cool I guess, and there is kind of a fake tiger drop, but this one drains all of your heat, which why would you want to drain all of your heat in Dragon in this game? Yakuza Kiwami gave us back the classic Dragon style, but they made some questionable decisions. For some reason, the gear system still applies to Dragon, which means you have to have a certain amount of heat for the combo speed to actually be good. Double finishers now drain heat. For some reason, the Kamaki parry stun time got nerfed heavily. Really weird decisions all across the board, but they did buff the tiger drop to an absurd degree. This is by far the best version of the tiger drop, and it hasn't been topped since. You know Kiryu's brawler and beast style? What if we took these two styles and repurposed them for a new character in a new engine? That's where Kaido comes in. Kaido in his own DLC, the Kaido Files, got two fighting styles which are just Kiryu's brawler and beast style from Yakuza 0. Now, since this is the Dragon engine, the two styles will already feel different in nature, but RGG did decide to take some extra steps to make Kaido feel different than Kiryu. The main thing being the secret arts, which was a buff that Yagami would get from his different styles when meeting a certain condition. Kaido's secret art from Bruiser involved him hitting his counter bitch slap in order to give him a massive speed buff in his combos, which was very strong. In Bruiser, he also had a tiger drop, the Kamaki roll, and even his own double finishers that actually suited Kaido. Tank's rush combos were faster than Beast style, which is already a big difference. However, they did remove some things like being able to pick up enemies off of the ground and doing charged finishers. In return, if you do a perfect guard, you get a defense buff. On top of that, there's of course the special abilities you get from extreme heat mode. This is the best way they've repurposed a previous game's move style for a new character. I love Kaido's playstyle, one of my favorite characters in the series. I think where RGG kind of fumbles when it comes to their movesets is with their enemies and bosses. As you go through each and every game in the series, soon you'll start noticing enemies that share movesets with each other. Sometimes it's blatantly obvious, other times RGG tries to spice it up by combining movesets. It makes sense for a character like Lao Kao Long to use his moveset from Yakuza 3 and Yakuza Kiwami, same character, but then you start asking, why did they choose Baba's moveset for Hayashi's moveset in Yakuza Kiwami? I think an even funnier one is Aizawa. They saw the final boss of Yakuza 5 and went, you know who needs this moveset? Gary Buster Holmes. So now that became his moveset for Yakuza Kiwami 1 and Kiwami 2. Then we also got the Aizawa bot from the special match in Like a Dragon Gaiden. At least this one makes sense because it's supposed to be a fake Aizawa bot. Sometimes I don't have a problem with it. Hell, Joe Amon is just a juiced up Kiryu at the end of the day, but even he comes with his own gimmicks here and there. RGG sometimes just doesn't really pull enough unique movesets from their roster pool. Man, I hate seeing Kanai's moveset. This guy's moveset sucks. My least favorite character from Yakuza 5, and I keep having to see his moveset in multiple games. Like, geez, get away from me already. When transitioning to the Dragon engine, RGG decided that Kiryu should go back to having one style. So what they did was take his multiple styles from Zero and Kiwami and blend them to be the brand new Dragon style. The Rush combos are very brawler-esque. They have the parry from Rush. They have the Beast light attack now as charge attacks. It's a very interesting approach to show that Kiryu took all of his previous fighting styles to make it his own. However, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I'm actually not a fan of Dragon Engine's Dragon style. I don't think it's bad in a sense, but in the games they've been in, I don't think they flow very well with each other. I can at least appreciate how each finisher feels different in each of their hit effects. However, they completely nerfed the bounding throws. Each bounding throw finisher previously were different and had different appliances. In the Dragon Engine, now there's only 2 throws and they do the same thing, which is extremely lame. In Yakuza 6, it definitely felt the worst because the finishers were very slow. It also didn't have any grounded heat actions, which was very awkward. Thankfully, Yakuza Kiwami 2 fixed this issue by buffing the speed of the finishers and bringing back grounded heat actions. For as much as I crap on Kiwami 2, I think it took the new Dragon style in the right direction, minus the heat changes and the overall clunkiness of the early Dragon Engine games. Gaiden to me is the best that this new Dragon style has felt, especially when it's built off of Lost Judgment's engine, so none of the old quirks are present. They did also add a lot of cool new things like your charged light attacks now having the 3 beast hits. You can now charge your finishers with 2 of them giving you a launcher. They also gave this style triple finishers, which is awesome. Now, my question is, why is this style so slow? I don't know why, but they've completely nerfed Kiryu's combo speed in this game. It's like I'm playing Yakuza 1 Kiryu, except this is somehow even slower than Yakuza 1 Kiryu. How is that even possible? It's almost in line with Kaido's tank style in terms of speed. Not only that, but unlike in Yakuza 6 and Kiwami 2, there's no way to upgrade your combo speed. From the beginning of the game till the end of the game, Kiryu will always be in the same slow combo speed. In return, this is definitely one of the strongest Kiryus in terms of raw damage, so I guess it's a good compensation, but it doesn't elevate the Dragon style in Gaiden from being anything but just okay. Which is especially noticeable because it is sharing the same game as the Agent style, which I think is the worst style in the series. Oh god. Okay, Majima's Mad Dog style. For years, it has been a boss moveset and it finally became playable in Yakuza 0. I'm gonna be honest, I initially wasn't vibing with the Mad Dog style because it was very unconventional, especially with how weird the rush combos were for attacking enemies. This is on top of the gear system being the way it was, and Mad Dog didn't feel good at low levels. However, as time passed, I really started vibing with how Mad Dog controlled. I started approaching it a little more like how Majima would fight me, going for a hit and run approach, quick step in mid combo, and taking advantage of the chomp ability being able to hit grounded opponents. Then taunting to gain heat. It felt so satisfying playing Mad Dog in Zero. It may be very limited in its moveset with what abilities you can use, but it is a very fun style, which makes what they did to it in Kiwami 2 absolutely abhorrent.
Get the fuck out of here, Luna. Take that dumb shit with you.
Wow, this is bad. Really bad. I don't know what the hell happened here, but I think RGG made sure to blatantly make Mad Dog awful in this game. Not only is it very sluggish, but you lose the ability to run around and perform chomps. You're playing Kiwami 2, so you have to deal with the blocking recoil, and sometimes it just decides not to work. It only has 2 heat actions as well. In the Majima saga, you can't level up Majima, which I guess makes sense because you're only playing this campaign for 30 minutes, so why even bother making the effort to make Mad Dog feel good to play? I think it's inexcusable, which is probably why they went above and beyond that the Kaido files actually felt like a worthwhile DLC. They didn't want to make the same mistake twice. Kiwami 2 Mad Dog is actually the worst style in the series, and I was worried that if this is how Mad Dog was going to feel in the Dragon Engine moving forward, I didn't want it. So they decided to completely revamp it in Pirate Yakuza. Mad Dog in Pirate Yakuza isn't really Mad Dog, despite what the name tells you. Well, it certainly gives you Mad Dog's noticeable moves like the charge stab and the spin attack. You do the knife slashes similar to what he does in Yakuza 5, which wasn't a thing before. He even has his shadow clones from Yakuza 5. So the Mad Dog abilities are present, but they went with the same approach as they did with Kiryu by combining their previous styles to make it into a new style. This time they combined the Thug style with the Mad Dog style. So the light attacks are taken from the Thug style, but they've been replaced with new finishers featuring the knife so it can feel a little more like Mad Dog. Many community members have been vocal about how Mad Dog and Pirate Yakuza shouldn't even be referred to as much, and is an insult to what Mad Dog actually was in Zero and as Majima's boss moveset. As for me, I really like this style. It does have its problems, like not having a grounded heat action. However, unlike in Yakuza 6, where this was more of a problem, Mad Dog and Pirate Yakuza feels very fluid to use. Because of the game feel of Pirate Yakuza, it just feels very good to me. I can kinda get the idea of what they were trying to go for here. They wanted Mad Dog to feel a bit more competent in 1v1s, so they decided to bring in the combos from Thug, even giving Majima a very powerful and easy to access launcher for juggles, while also keeping some of Mad Dog's abilities to even make it capable for crowd control, even giving Majima air daggers to throw against a group of enemies. Mad Dog and Pirate Yakuza just felt fun to me. Does it leave room for creativity in what you can do with it? No, not really. It's very homogenized and you'll end up getting the same results no matter what finisher you do. I don't see it as a bad thing personally, but I know for some it's a huge deal. If this is how they're gonna go about Mad Dog in the future, I actually don't mind this approach. I certainly like it more than what they were trying to go for with Kiryu. It can use some improvements, yes, but I can't bring myself to dislike it. I like it just as much as I do Zero's Mad Dog for different reasons. And that's the interesting thing about Yakuza Combat for me. Despite sharing so much DNA with each other, RGG tries to make every game feel different with how they try to spice up the combat. No game feels exactly similar to each other, which I appreciate. Would it be nice to have some consistency? Of course. I wish they would keep a lot of what works instead of reinventing the wheel all the time. But this approach has led to many fans having their own varied impressions about how Yakuza Combat should be and what they prefer and what they love about it. I think it does bring a lot of variety to the conversation, and I'm glad my journey through the series has opened my eyes to these things. I really appreciate you all for watching this video. I would greatly appreciate it if you hit the like button and leave a comment on the video if you enjoyed it and tell me your thoughts about it. I do plan to make more Yakuza related content, so I would love some feedback. If you're interested in seeing more of my videos, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you can get a notification on my next upload. I hope you all have a wonderful day and stay saucy.